The shuttle window showed nothing but streaks of light. Thin white lines stretching across the dark like scratch marks on glass. She watched them the way some people watched rain, quiet and still, her breath fogging the corner of the pane. Space always looked peaceful from a distance. It was almost cruel how calm it seemed, because underneath that calm, she knew whole worlds could crack apart, whole families could vanish, and no one would ever hear them scream. She learned that the night her brother didn't come home. Back then, she wasn't a fighter or a strategist or anything close to dangerous. She was just someone who fixed old cum units in a cramped workshop at the edge of a mining colony. Her brother used to sit on the counter while she worked, swinging his legs and making up stories about joining the Deep Range Explorers one day. He had that kind of mind, bright, restless, always dreaming of stars he'd never seen. She never told him she worried every time he rushed off to help someone, even strangers, even those she felt didn't deserve his trust. He always said the same thing: people are better than they seem. Someone just needs to show them how. She used to believe him. The call came early in the morning, long before the colony lights brightened. A static-filled message, broken by interference, carrying only fragments of words her brother's. ID beacon, a location deep inside the industrial quarter, and then a distorted metallic sound before everything went silent. When she reached the site, she found only scorched ground, a dented beacon casing, and a crowd of workers whispering about the off-worlders who'd arrived that week. No one made eye contact with her, no one offered help. And though no one said it directly, she felt the truth settle in her chest like cold iron. Someone had hurt him. Someone had taken him. Someone thought they could do it and walk away. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stood there, her hands trembling, and let the silence carve itself into her memory. That was the moment everything changed. For the first time in her life, she felt something harder than fear. She didn't have a word for it then, but later she would understand. It was resolve. A single promise forming inside her so deeply it felt like it fused to her bones. She would wait. She would learn, and one day, she would make every one of them regret what they did. She didn't tell anyone, not even the officials who shrugged off her report with tired excuses about Altuve zone accidents. She knew they wouldn't help. So she left the colony within the week, taking nothing but a bag of tools, her brother's old data strap, and the promise she'd made to herself. The years that followed reshaped her. She joined cargo crews, research teams, remote salvage units, job that would take her farther from home and closer to the truth. She learned how to fix more than broken cum units. She learned how to survive in vacuum, how to track energy signatures across drifting wreckage, how to pilot vessels not meant for human hands. She learned languages that clicked, hummed, or shimmered like light. She listened to rumors in dim station bars about off-world factions who operated outside any council oversight. Groups known for testing their power on small colonies, where oversight was thin and consequences thinner. Humanity had a reputation. In the wider galaxy, fragile, untempered, easy to push around. Most species saw humans as young and soft, too new to understand the cost of standing up for themselves. She heard that view repeated everywhere she traveled. Humans were tolerated, sometimes pitied, but rarely respected. And every time she heard another passing comment about how humans break easily, something in her steadied further. If they believed that, then they had no idea what she was becoming. She trained quietly, without drawing attention. She kept her head down and her ears open. She gathered details, small ones at first, but enough to form patterns. There were reports of missing workers near outer rim stations, unexplained power drains around unregistered ships, sightings of tall, metallic humanoids with mirrored visors and pale blue light running through the seams of their armor, always traveling in pairs, always silent, always leaving behind fear and confusion. The same kind of confusion she felt the morning her brother disappeared. Every time she thought she was getting close, the trail slipped just out of reach. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Her brother had believed in the best of people. So she would learn to be the part of humanity the galaxy didn't expect, the part that endured, adapted, and refused to break. HFY, some travelers called it humanity, F, asterisk, asterisk. Yeah, asterisk, though she never used the phrase herself. But she carried its meaning. Humans weren't soft. Humans weren't weak. Humans didn't give up when pushed. They fought back, smartly, relentlessly, and with a fire no one else could match. And she had that fire now. The breakthrough came 5 years after she left home. She was working maintenance on a deep-range survey vessel when they intercepted a distress ping from a derelict transport drifting near the edge of restricted space. Official orders were to steer clear, but something in the signal made her freeze. The frequency pattern wasn't random, it matched the fractured interference from her brother's last transmission. She convinced the captain to let her join the inspection team. The transport looked lifeless, its hull scarred but intact. No signs of explosive damage. No heat signatures, no movement. Just a quiet, abandoned vessel carrying the faint echo of something she'd chased for years. Inside, the corridors felt wrong to clean, too deliberately untouched. As if someone had wiped away every sign of life but left the shell as bait. Then she found the symbol. A small mark etched into the metal near the command deck. A vertical line with 2 branching curves, simple, unmistakable. She had seen sketches of it scattered through old station logs, always tied to those silent metallic figures. Her chest tightened as she reached out, running her thumb across the groove. The metal was smooth, almost polished, like it had been carved with precision tools. She didn't tell the others what it meant. She just said she needed a moment to take readings. But standing alone in that corridor, she felt the truth settle over her, not as fear, but as clarity. She wasn't chasing ghosts anymore. Someone had left this mark deliberately. Someone wanted her to find it. Or maybe they wanted to see how. Much she had learned, how far she had come, and whether a human would dare to keep going. She knew what her answer was. When the team left the transport and returned to the survey vessel, she kept quiet, reviewing every scan she'd taken. The symbol wasn't old. It hadn't been exposed to long-term radiation damage. It was fresh. Recent. A message. For the first time since her brother disappeared, she felt something shift inside her, not hope exactly, but direction. She wasn't wandering blind anymore. She was on the right path, closer than ever. That night, as the ship drifted through quiet space and the others slept, she sat alone in the navigation room, staring at the symbol on her tablet. Her heart beat slow, steady, certain. She whispered a quiet promise into the dark. I'm coming. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the ones she sought were already watching. And the transport they had boarded wasn't abandoned at all. It was waiting. ChatGPT said, the survey ship drifted through open space with the steady, gentle sway of something half asleep. Most of the crew had settled into their bunks after the long inspection, trusting the ship's autopilot and sensors to keep watch. But she stayed in the navigation room, the symbol glowing on her tablet like a quiet challenge. Every few minutes she glanced at the main window, expecting to see something movement. A shadow, a flash of light, but the stars remained still. She tried to calm her breathing, tried to convince herself she was only tired, imagining patterns where none existed. But deep down, she felt the shift in the air long before the alarms confirmed it. The first warning was subtle. A soft hum ran beneath the floor plating, a vibration too smooth to be mechanical error. She paused, listening, then crossed to the sensor panel. The display flickered once, then twice. before stabilizing with a faint orange tint, something it did only when an unregistered object entered their detection range. Her pulse quickened. A vessel was trailing them. Close, closer than any ship should have been able to approach without setting off every alarm on board. She zoomed in on the reading, but the scanner struggled to outline the intruder. It kept dissolving into static, reshaping itself, slipping past the system's attempts to map it. For a moment, she thought it might be debris or a sensor glitch, until the outline snapped into focus with the sharp precision of something that wanted to be seen. A sleek, narrow craft. No visible windows. No exposed thrusters. Pale blue energy lines tracing faint circuits along its hull. Her stomach dropped. It matched the rumors. The sketches, the vague half-descriptions from people too afraid to speak plainly. Before she could call the captain, the alarm finally sounded a piercing, metallic tone that cut through the quiet halls. The lights shifted from soft white to deep amber, warning everyone on board that something had locked onto them. She grabbed the tablet, bolted into the corridor, and nearly collided with two crew members rushing toward the bridge. Their wide eyes told her they had seen the alert too. "What's out there?" one of them asked. She didn't answer. Not because she wanted to keep secrets, but because she didn't trust her voice not to crack. She forced herself to breathe, to keep moving. On the bridge, the captain was already at the main console, trying to hail the unknown vessel. Static answered every attempt. The screen flashed with scrambled symbols, none of which matched any known code. Then the external feed cut out entirely. Something was jamming them. Her hands tightened at her sides. This was no accident. No drifting wreck. No harmless encounter. This was connected. It had to be. But she couldn't say that, not yet. Not without proofs, so she stood silently while the captain barked orders, shifting the ship into evasive patterns. The engines groaned as the vessel attempted a sharp, banking turn. But the pursuing craft adjusted instantly, matching their movement with unnerving precision. It was like watching a shadow chase its owner. Just when the crew began to panic, the intruding ship disappeared from the scanners altogether, vanishing without trace. No jump signature, no ion trail, nothing. The alarms faded. The lights returned to white, and the silence that followed was heavier than the noise had been. The captain demanded explanations from the sensor techs, but all they found was corrupted data, loops of digital static where clear readings should have been. As if someone or something had scrubbed the evidence clean. She didn't speak up. She didn't need to. The captain's gaze found her anyway, searching her expression as though he sensed she recognized the pattern. "Is there something you're not telling me?" he asked quietly when the bridge crew focused on restoring systems. She hesitated. She wanted to tell him everything. But if she did, she knew what would come next. Orders to report her findings, protocols that would slow her down, reassignment to prevent emotional compromise. She had seen it happen to others before. Humans were often treated like fragile cargo too inexperienced to act without supervision. And she couldn't risk losing momentum now. "Nothing I can prove," she said softly. His frown deepened, but he didn't press. The rest of the crew stayed on alert for hours, scanning every direction, waiting for the unknown ship to return. Yet nothing happened. The encounter began to feel unreal, like a shared hallucination caused by exhaustion or bad calibration. Crew chatter drifted toward hopeful explanations: sensor failure, stray reflection, misread cosmic radiation. She didn't correct them. Later, when her shift ended, she made her way back to her small shared quarters. Her bunkmate was already asleep, unaware of anything that had happened. The soft hum of the air filters was the only sound in the room. She sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the tablet again. 5 years. 5 years of chasing pieces. And now, the first solid sign that she wasn't imagining the connection. Something out there had followed the transport. Something out there had followed her. She touched the symbol on the screen, tracing the curved lines the same way she had traced them inside the derelict ship. A message. A trail, or maybe a warning. When she finally lay back, exhaustion pulled at her, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept replaying the silent pursuit, the clean lines of that sleek ship, the way it had matched their movements like it was studying them, studying her. She shut her eyes tightly and tried to breathe. If they were watching, if they knew she was searching, then everything was about to change. And she wasn't sure if that terrified her or steadied her. The next day, the ship resumed its planned route. Though the captain required every station to remain manned and every sensor to stay active, she returned to her station as if nothing had happened, trying to blend into routine. But she felt something different in the way people looked at her small glances, unsure and tense. They all had sensed she knew more. Humans had instincts for that sort of thing. During a maintenance cycle, she pulled the navigation logs from the moment the intruder disappeared. The data should have shown a clean break 1 second the craft existed. The next, it didn't. But instead, she found a missing window of 12 seconds where the logs simply stopped. No corruption. No fragmentation. The data block was just empty, like it had been lifted out with surgical precision. She stared at the gap, feeling the weight of it. Someone had reached inside their system without setting off a single alert. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. She copied the logs to her personal drive, hiding them deep in an encrypted folder. If the crew discovered she was keeping information, there would be questions she wasn't ready to answer. She needed time to think, to piece together what she had seen. Throughout the day, she picked up small clues from conversation drifting through the ship. The engineer who mentioned a faint pulse running through the hull plating at the exact moment the unknown vessel vanished. The comms officer who swore she saw the navigation grid flicker like someone had momentarily taken control. The medic who found a strange metallic residue on the soles of her boots after boarding the derelict transport. Tiny details. Easy to dismiss. But to her, they were signals pointing in the same direction. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. The group she'd been tracking, the ones connected to disappearances. Silent sightings, unexplained damage was closer than she had ever imagined. And now, instead of finding evidence of them, they were leaving evidence for her. That night, a quiet tension hung over the ship. Crew members spoke in low voices, as though they feared being overheard. Even the captain paced more than usual. Everyone tried to act normal, but the air felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. She returned to the navigation room, drawn there without fully understanding why. The stars outside glowed the same as always, but she felt watched, as though eyes she couldn't see were tracking her through the glass. The console lights dimmed suddenly, flickering twice before stabilizing. Every display on the panel reset to blank for a fraction of a second, just long enough for her to see something appear on the main screen. The symbol, clear, sharp, not scratched or etched displayed. Someone had accessed the system remotely, bypassed everything, and placed the symbol directly on the navigation feed. Her breath caught. It pulsed once with a faint blue glow, then disappeared entirely, leaving the console blank. Alarms didn't sound. The ship didn't shake. No one else seemed to notice. It was meant for her alone. She stood there frozen, staring at the empty screen as the hair on the back of her neck lifted. They weren't just watching her. They were calling her, inviting her, testing whether she would follow. A soft clatter behind her broke the silence. A dropped tool, or a footstep, she couldn't tell. She spun around quickly, but the room was empty. The corridor outside lay still, washed in pale white light. For a long moment, she didn't move. Something had happened. Something none of the crew would believe if she reported it. And even if they did believe it, they would pull her from the mission immediately. She knew what she had to do next. She had to leave the ship. Not run away, but go where they wanted her to go. Follow the trail they were leaving, even if it led her straight into danger. Her chest tightened at the thought. But the fear didn't stop her. It sharpened her, because somewhere out there, someone had taken her brother. And now, after years of silence, they were reaching out. Not to threaten her, but to draw her closer. She didn't know why. She didn't know what they expected her to find, but she knew this whatever waited for her next wasn't going to be simple, or safe, or predictable. And she was done waiting for answers. She stepped away from the console and took a slow breath. Tomorrow, she would begin the next part of the search alone. If she had to, she didn't notice the small camera mounted in the corner of the room, slowly turning to follow her movements, or the faint blue flicker that passed across its lens. They were watching, and they were getting bolder. The next morning came with a strange, heavy quiet. Even the usual hum of the ship felt muted, like the vessel itself was holding its breath. She moved through the corridors, trying not to draw attention, but she sensed the shift in the crew. People were tense, jumping at small sounds, whispering when they thought no one was listening. It wasn't fear of the unknown ship anymore, it was something deeper. The kind of worry that settles in when everyone knows something is wrong, but no one can name it. She headed toward the engineering deck under the excuse of checking on a calibration issue. But her mind was somewhere else entirely. She needed a plan, a way to leave the survey ship without looking suspicious. She needed supplies, maps, and a vessel small enough to go unnoticed. And she needed to do all of that without anyone asking why a tech worker suddenly wanted to venture into restricted territory. As she entered engineering, she found the chief mechanic crouched over an open panel. He glanced up, surprised but not annoyed. "Didn't expect to see you down here this early," he said, wiping grease from his hands. "Thought I'd help with the grid reset," she replied, keeping her tone casual. "Seems like the ship still isn't stable." He let out a dry laugh. "Stable. That's a generous word. Half the systems ran diagnostics at dawn, as if someone poked at them from outside. Never seen a ship react like that without tripping an alarm." Her heartbeat quickened. She forced herself not to comment. He gestured at a nearby console. "If you want to make yourself useful, pull up the power routing. Something's been drawing from the auxiliary bank since last night, but I can't trace it." She moved to the console, trying to focus. A hidden energy draw. That meant someone or something was siphoning power quietly. Her fingers skimmed the controls, searching for irregularities. And sure enough, she saw it. A thin current, routed not through the main systems, but between them. Slipping in the cracks like a whisper, she hesitated. Should she point it out? Or would that only alert whoever was doing it? Before she had to decide, the mechanic grunted in frustration behind her. "Whatever's causing it, better show itself soon. Last thing we need is a ghost in the wiring while we're still out here." She nodded, but her mind was already shifting. If there was a drain, then it had a source, and if she could track it quietly, she might find a clue the others would overlook as she left engineering. She passed to crew members talking in hushed voices outside the lift. "You really think it's connected to that derelict?" One whispered, "Everything started after we boarded it." The other said, "The weird readings, the ship tailing us, the static on the comms. Something's off." They fell silent when they saw her, pretending to check their schedules. She pretended not to notice, though their unease only added weight to her own as she walked toward her workstation. She kept replaying the moment from the night before, the symbol appearing on the navigation screen. The soft glow fading the moment she acknowledged it. It wasn't random. It wasn't accidental. It was a signal, placed deliberately. But there was something else she hadn't mentioned to anyone. Right before the symbol vanished, she had felt a faint pulse ripple through the floor, as though a presence had moved through the ship not physically, but electrically. Like someone had brushed their fingers across the systems themselves. She reached her station, sat down, and pulled up the encrypted folder containing the edited logs. The missing 12 seconds haunted her. She zoomed in again, examining the edges of the data block. It hadn't simply been erased, had been lifted, cleanly and precisely. That level of control required intimate access to their systems, or technology, far more advanced than human designs. She closed the file quickly when someone approached. It was the captain. "We need to talk," he said quietly. She followed him to a small observation room. It was one of the few places on the ship where the walls weren't lined with sensors or consoles. Just a window looking out into open space. The captain folded his arms. "I've been reviewing the logs from last night, and I noticed you pulled copies of the data blocks." Her stomach dropped. She should have known he would find out. "I need to know why," he continued, voice calm but firm. "You've been acting different since the derelict. You knew something about that ship, didn't you?" She didn't answer right away. She wasn't sure how much to reveal. But before she could speak, the captain sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I'm not accusing you," he said. "But I need to understand what we're dealing with. The crew is scared, and honestly, I am too." She looked at the floor, then slowly met his eyes. "I don't have proof yet," she said. "Just pieces, patterns, but I think the group responsible for the disappearances near the outer rim is tied to what we found on the transport." He didn't flinch. He just waited. "And I think they're watching us," she added softly. A long silence filled the room. The captain eventually exhaled, a sound that held both disbelief and acceptance. "Whatever's out there," he said slowly, "why would they be interested in you?" The question hit her harder than she expected. She swallowed, unsure if she wanted to speak the truth out loud. "They took someone from my colony," she said. "Years ago. Someone close to me." The captain's expression shifted, not shock, but understanding. She didn't have to explain further before he could respond. The ship's lights flickered again. Once, twice. Then the overhead panels dimmed to half strength. A moment later, the alarm sounded, not the loud, blaring one from the night before, but a soft, low tone used only when internal systems detected tampering. The captain and she rushed out of the observation room. Crew members were already gathering near the central console. The engineer's voice came through the comms. "Captain, we've got a breach in subsystem 4. Not physically electrical. Something's rewriting the architecture." Her pulse jumped. Rewriting, not damaging, not breaking. Rewriting. The captain barked commands. But she wasn't listening. Her mind was racing. Whoever was watching them wasn't hiding anymore. They were interacting with the ship openly. Using its systems like a canvas, she slipped away from the crowd and moved toward subsystem 4. It was a quiet part of the ship, mostly housing communications, relays, and backup processors. As she stepped inside, she noticed something immediately. The air felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. One of the panels had come online on its own. Lines of unfamiliar code rushed across the screen in shapes that weren't random. Patterns, curves, almost like a language. She stepped closer. The lines organized themselves, forming a symbol, the same one. But this time, it didn't disappear. It flickered slowly, like a heartbeat. Then a soft metallic sound echoed. Behind her, the faint shift of something moving. She froze. She wasn't alone. She turned slowly. Her breath caught tight in her chest, in the far corner. Half hidden in shadow, something stood tall still, almost blending into the metallic walls. It had no face she could see, only a smooth visor reflecting the dim lights. Thin blue traces ran along its limbs, pulsing in rhythm with the symbol on the screen. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it. In her ears, the figure didn't move toward her. It didn't speak, but she felt its attention, focused and sharp then, without sound. Without any motion she could detect, it split into 3 faint images like echoes or aftershadows and vanished completely. The lights returned to normal. The charge in the air softened. Footsteps pounded toward the room. The captain entered, breathless. "Did you see the breach?" "Is everything?" He stopped when he saw her face. "What happened?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Not yet, because what she had just seen wasn't a glitch, or a rumor, or a distant sighting. They were already on the ship, not attacking, not harming, but watching her more closely than ever, guiding her, testing her, and whatever they wanted next. She could feel it closing in around her like gravity. For hours after the encounter in Subsystem 4, she moved through the ship in a fog of adrenaline. Every sound felt sharper. Every flicker of light seemed intentional. The figure she'd seen, the tall, silent shape with the glowing seams, lingered at the edge of her thoughts like a shadow she couldn't turn toward. She kept replaying the moment it vanished, how it hadn't stepped away or retreated. It had simply diffused, as though its body obeyed rules she didn't understand. The captain called an emergency meeting, but she barely heard half of it. The crew tried to discuss protocols and security sweeps, but their voices trembled. No one dared mention the possibility of a physical intruder. They were all dancing around the truth even when they felt it pressing against them from every corridor. She didn't speak, she just listened, storing every detail. There was no point telling them what she saw. Not yet. Not until she understood why the figure had appeared to her and not anyone else. When the crew was dismissed, she didn't return to her bunk. She couldn't. Her hands were still shaking. Instead, she walked the hall slowly, paying attention to the subtle things, the faint hums, the way certain doors paused before opening, the temperature shifts that followed her footsteps. The ship felt alive. Not in the comforting way she'd once felt, back when she used to joke that star vessels had moods. No, this was different. This was focused. A presence moving through the systems with purpose. That night, she sat alone in the mess hall, long after everyone had gone. The windows showed a field of distant stars, quiet and endless. But she couldn't shake the sensation that something watched her from just beyond the glass. She touched her brother's old data strap around her wrist, running her thumb over the worn metal. She used to do that when she missed him. Now she did it to steady herself. "I'm close," she whispered. "I know I am." The lights overhead dimmed slightly, as though acknowledging her. She wasn't sure if it was a malfunction or a message. She wasn't sure if she wanted it to be either. The next morning, a new problem emerged, one impossible to ignore. The ship's long-range drive wouldn't engage. Diagnostics claimed everything was normal, but the engine wouldn't respond to navigation commands. They were stuck drifting at half speed. It's far enough from regulated space that no quick assistance could reach them. Quiet fear settled over the crew. Someone asked if pirates could be responsible. Someone else suggested cosmic interference. No one said what they were truly thinking. Something on the ship was preventing them from leaving. The captain tried to maintain order, but exhaustion pulled at the edges of his voice. He eventually pulled her aside again, lowering his tone so only she could hear. "Tell me the truth," he said. "Do you think the ones who took your brother are doing this?" She hesitated. "I think they're involved, but I don't think they're attacking us." His brow furrowed. "Then what are they doing?" She searched for the right words, but the truth felt too large to fit into a clean explanation. Instead, she said, "I think they're steering us somewhere." He stared at her for a long moment, not dismissing, not doubting, trying to understand. Before he could respond, the CUM system crackled with sudden static. The lights flickered again. Screens across the bridge reset, all switching to the same image, the symbol. It pulsed once, twice. Then the screens fell black, one by one, like candles being snuffed. Everyone froze. The symbol had appeared before, but only in private, only to her. Now the entire ship was seeing it. The captain barked orders to restore systems, but nothing responded. The ship drifted in silence, dead in the water except for emergency lights. The symbol lingered on the main screen, glowing in that same pale blue she'd seen running along the figure's armor. The air felt tight, charged again. She sensed it like a vibration through her bones. "They want us to see this," she whispered. The captain exhaled through his teeth, jaw clenched. "And what exactly is this supposed to tell us?" She didn't know. But the symbol grew brighter, and the screen shifted slowly. The image expanded, revealing more lines branching outward, points circling the center shape. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't even a signature. It was a map, but not a map of space routes or star clusters. The shapes were too irregular, the spacing too deliberate. It looked like a layout, a structure. A place her heart clenched. She recognized the outer ridges not perfectly, but well enough. Her colony had been near similar geological curves, at the edge of a crater formation. But the inner lines were completely unfamiliar. They formed corridors, chambers, pathways, something hidden beneath the ground. The captain leaned in, frowning. "Where is this?" She stared at the screen, pulse racing. "I don't know yet," she said. "But I think they expect me to." As if responding, the map shifted again, zooming in on one narrow corridor. The lines brightened. A small pulse flickered at the end, most like a beacon. A message she could almost hear come when the lights finally returned to normal. The crew exhaled as if waking from a nightmare. The symbol vanished, but something else remained. Coordinates printed faintly on the bottom corner of the screen. A. Location in unregulated territory. The captain looked at her with a mixture of disbelief and dread. "They want us to travel there." She nodded slowly. "Yes." "And you're planning to go," he said, not a question, but a certainty. "I have to." He rubbed his hand across his face. This ship wasn't meant for deep, unregulated travel. And if this is a trap, it's not a trap. Her voice steadied, sharper than she expected. "It's a trail. They could have taken us by force if they wanted to. They didn't." He didn't argue. He knew it was true, but tension rippled through the crew when the captain announced their change in course. People whispered about turning back, about calling for help, about abandoning ship if they had to. But none of those options mattered now. Something had its hands on their systems, and it was leading them forward, whether they were willing or not. During the journey to the coordinates, she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that figure standing in the corner of Subsystem 4, still, silent, unmoving. She wondered if it would appear again. She wondered if more were here. She wondered if they were watching her every step. The closer the ship drew to the destination, the more the systems behaved strangely. Doors opened before she reached them. Screens flickered whenever she passed. Lights pulsed faintly in the same rhythm she'd seen twice before. The crew grew more restless, but she felt something else beneath the fear. Anticipation. The coordinates led to a region of space with no permanent settlements, only scattered moons and mining outposts long abandoned. As they approached, the sensors glitched again, but not violently, almost gently, as though something was guiding them through interference without letting them crash. When the final marker appeared on the screen, the ship slowed automatically. Out the main window, a small planetoid drifted in pale light. It looked quiet, untouched, no visible structures, no signs of life. But she knew better. "It's underground," she murmured. The captain stared at the world ahead. What exactly are we walking into? She didn't answer, because the truth was unsettling. Something built a hidden facility there. Something linked to the disappearances, and something wanted her inside. A low hum vibrated through the ship's frame, like a distant heartbeat echoing up from the planet below. The moment they prepared a shuttle for descent, the vibrations intensified, and a soft, deep tone echoed through the speakers, not words, but a call. The same pulse she'd felt in Subsystem 4. The same one she'd sensed near the derelict transport. She stood at the shuttle door long before the others arrived, staring at the small world outside, feeling the intensity of everything rising inside her. Fear.resolve, and something else she never expected. Recognition, like she had been here before in a dream. The captain stepped beside her. "We'll go in together. No one is letting you walk into this alone." She nodded, though her thoughts drifted far from him. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone down there was waiting, that the truth she had chased for years about her brother, about the silent watchers, about humanity's place among them, was buried beneath that surface, ready to rise. As the shuttle powered up, the ship behind them flickered again. A faint blue glow traced along the walls, following her as she stepped inside, not threatening, calling. The hatch closed, and as the shuttle detached, descending toward the quiet, dark surface of the planetoid, she felt something shift around her, attention tightening, a moment stretching itself thin. Whatever waited down there was the reason she had been led across half the galaxy, and whatever happened next would change everything. She didn't know if she was ready, but she knew she was out of time. The shuttle cut through the thin atmosphere of the planetoid, drifting lower until the ground beneath them came into focus. The terrain looked empty at first, flat stone, pale dust, scattered ridges, but the closer they descended, the more she felt the pull of something waiting beneath the surface. It wasn't fear. It wasn't danger. It was an unmistakable sense of direction, like a compass tugging inside her chest. The landing was smooth, too smooth. The shuttle barely touched down before its systems shifted into standby on their own, as if guided by an unseen hand. The captain exchanged a wary look with her, but neither said anything. They stepped out carefully, boots crunching against the silent ground. The air was thin, but breathable. The sky above them was washed in soft gray light, reflecting off distant floating ice crystals. There was no sign of structures, no signs of life. Just the quiet of a place untouched for a long time. "Are you sure this is it?" one of the crew members asked, scanning the barren landscape. "Yes," she said. "They want us here." Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath her vibrated with a low, steady hum, the same rhythm, the same pulse that had followed her for months. The dust around them shifted, drawing inward like sand pulled by an invisible current. A circular outline formed beneath their feet, wide and precise, and the dust fell away in pieces. Then the floor lowered. The crew scrambled backward, but she didn't move. The platform descended slowly, carrying her and the others into darkness. The walls around them lit one by one with soft blue lines, revealing a smooth tunnel spiraling downward. The light pulse matched the symbol she had followed for so long. They reached the bottom, and the platform settled into place with a quiet click. A corridor stretched ahead, tall and wide, lit by faint beams of shifting blue. The air felt warmer here, filled with a calm energy that softened the fear in her chest. "This wasn't built by humans," the captain whispered. "No," she said, "but it was meant for us." As they walked deeper, the corridor widened into a vast chamber. The ceiling arched high above them, reflecting soft light like water. Platforms and columns rose from the floor, arranged in patterns she didn't recognize. But her attention stopped on the far side of the room. A figure stood, waiting, tall, silent, with that same smooth visor and faint blue lines pulsing across its frame. Her breath caught, not in fear, but in understanding. It stepped forward without sound, stopping at a respectful distance. Behind her, the crew tensed, uncertain whether to raise their tools for defense or remain still. But the figure didn't threaten. Instead, it extended one hand, palm open. The blue light along its arm brightened, casting a soft glow around them. She felt warmth radiate from it, gentle and steady. Not a weapon, not control, an invitation. She stepped closer. The crew started to object, but the captain placed a hand up, stopping them. She lifted her hand and touched the edge of the figure's palm-knot metal. Not cold, but something smooth and warm, as if the material responded to her presence. The moment her fingers made contact, a wave of images flickered across her mind. Shapes, patterns, landscapes, and finally a face, her brother. She gasped softly. He was older in the vision, not by much, but enough for her to notice. Healthy, alive. Then the image shifted. She saw him walking beside one of these figures, calm and confident, pointing at something on a screen she didn't recognize. She saw him learning, communicating, not trapped, not harmed. He had worked with them. The vision faded, and the figure stepped back. Her knees weakened, but she steadied herself. "He's alive," she whispered, barely able to breathe. The figure dipped its head in a slow nod. The captain and the crew stared at her. Stunned, she turned toward them. He wasn't taken. Not the way we thought. He found something. A hidden network, maybe a station off-grid. And these people, she gestured to the figure. They needed help. Human help. The figure reached out again and projected something through a thin beam of light, an intricate structure floating above its palm. A network of tunnels and chambers connected by energy conduits. It wasn't a trap or a fortress. It was an archive. A library. A place of shared knowledge. She understood now. The disappearances, the silent sightings, the untraceable energy signatures, they weren't acts of aggression. They were recruitment. A search for individuals who could bridge the gap between species. People who were curious, intuitive, and resilient. Humans.HFY humanity at its best. The captain spoke quietly. "Why bring us here? Why reveal yourselves now?" The figure responded not with words, but with another projection. This time it was a star map, highlighting a cluster of systems flickering with unstable light. Energy surges. Quiet collapses. Regions on the verge of destabilizing. A coming crisis, something bigger than any single species could handle. She stepped forward. "You need us?" The figure nodded again. "And my brother?" she asked, voice soft. "Where is he now?" This time, the figure walked across the chamber to a tall, narrow door that blended into the wall. It placed its hand on the surface, and the door slid open, revealing a smaller room beyond. Inside, soft light shimmered like sunlight through water, and standing in the center, her breath caught. A human silhouette. He turned at the sound of the door. Older, thinner, a small streak of color. In his hair, she didn't remember, but his eyes bright, hopeful, almost exactly as she remembered, locked onto hers. She froze, he froze. Time held its breath. Then he ran to her, and she moved without thinking, crossing the distance in seconds. They collided in a tight embrace, both trembling. She felt the quiet strength in his arms. The warmth of someone who had survived something impossible and come out the other side with hope still in his chest. "I knew you'd come," he whispered. "I never stopped looking," she said, voice breaking. Behind them, the crew stood silently, giving space they didn't need to be asked for. Even the figure remained still, watching with a kind of quiet respect. When they finally stepped back, her brother took her hand and guided her inside the room. "There's a lot to explain," he said, But the most important thing is this: they're not our enemies. They're trying to stop something that could break every world we know, including theirs. And humans. We see things differently. We solve problems in ways they don't expect. She smiled faintly. You always believed people could help each other, and you always believed in me, he replied. The hours that followed felt like minutes. Her brother explained how he had stumbled onto an early outpost years ago, how the silent watchers had first approached him cautiously, how they lacked communication methods understandable to humans. He had been the one to initiate the first exchange of knowledge. His disappearance wasn't an abduction, it was a choice, one he hadn't been able to communicate safely without risking misunderstanding on both sides. He hadn't expected her to chase him for years. But when he learned she was searching, it guided the Watchers to make contact. They wanted to test whether humanity was ready, he said. And you showed them how determined we are. Later, the captain met privately with the Watchers' representative. Plans for cooperation formed quickly, driven by the urgency of the crisis shown in the projections. The crew, once terrified, now stood in awe of the possibilities shared knowledge. Advanced technology, peaceful alliances. As for her, standing beside her brother, she felt a quiet settling inside her. Not relief exactly. More like something shifting into its proper place. The Watchers had chosen her to lead humanity's first direct partnership with them. Not because she was fearless, but because she refused to give up. Because she embodied the thing the galaxy often underestimated: human resilience. HFY, about power, not about supremacy, but about the simple truth that humans could rise, adapt, and stand beside others without being overshadowed. Together, they returned to the surface and then to the survey ship. Her brother would travel with them for the first leg, helping explain the coming coalition to human councils. It wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. As the shuttle ascended, she looked back at the planetoid one last time, the place where fear had turned into understanding, where mystery had turned into truth. Her brother touched her shoulder lightly. You ready for what comes next? She smiled, soft but certain. I've been ready for years.